The challenge that indigenous people in Africa are facing, lack of recognition. I think lack of legal recognition, especially, except one or two countries, none of the African countries recognize indigenous people as such in their constitutions or laws. So when that recognition, legal recognition, is not in place, then your existence is denied. When your existence is denied, then there's no way you can engage with the government. So you are forgotten. Those indigenous people are the forgotten people.
The dispossession of the land has made the Ogiek to disintegrate their culture. Like now, when this forest was cut down, many people in Ogiek came here. So when they came here, they affect our language. Like now, my children, they don't speak the real Ogiek language. They have been assimilated.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
During the sessions of the African Human Rights Commission, the Working Group on Indigenous Populations also get together for their own meetings. The working group is mandated to study how the African Charter on Human and People's Rights applies to indigenous populations on the continent and to carry out information gathering and sensitization on indigenous people's rights in Africa. In 2003, the working group presented a groundbreaking report, which among other things gave criteria for identification of indigenous peoples in Africa. Though the report was adopted by the African Commission and thereby by its member states, those criteria are still debated among the member states of the African Commission.
The 2003-2005 report, which was an exhaustive research on indigenous issues on the continent, was, in my view, the basis on which IWGIA and the working group were able to work on indigenous issues on the continent. With that report, so many things were clarified, so many things were defined, and the engagement with member states, engagement with other stakeholders, and engagement with indigenous populations on the continent became easier because this report explained very clearly some of the controversial concepts that states were not comfortable with.
The crucial importance is definitely the working group is an important instrument in lobbying and advocacy work to advance the rights of indigenous peoples at the African Union. And second, the working group works with indigenous peoples organizations throughout the continent to advance their rights at the local level, advise them, to lobby their governments as much as possible. And if there are legal issues, for example, let's say this is very much common in Kenya, where indigenous people's land has been taken by force, and communities took governments or companies to court. And in many cases, the local courts never ruled on behalf of the communities. And when that happens, it's taken to the African Commission on Human Rights. Then the African Commission either comes up with its own ruling, as it is in the case of the Endorois case in Kenya, or it refers the case to the African Court on Human and People's Rights, as it is in the case of the Ogiek, again in Kenya, and the African Court ruled in favor of the community. So these are very important contributions of the working group to the various communities in the continent.
The working group highlighted in its reports the situation of indigenous populations. The idea was to make indigenous population visible. They were no longer living in shadows. That is why the platform and the working group is so important, because for years they've been marginalized. For years they've been discriminated against. For years they have lost their rights, not only to their traditional lands, but to their traditional life, to their traditional culture, to their religion. They had no recognition within the borders, even of the state parties within which they lived.
Kitinye sururu inoni, kitinye likyai, kitinye tereti, kitinye nesoiti, mi sigotiki, mi morisioniki, mi kiptungoi, mi indoswa. Ko kie menyon kemiyu. Ko ki nekimoche amu ko kiboiboenchi kesit nekotoretech Jehova koboto choronok ko kokimwai kongoi en ngalekab kotini nebo Afrika amu kotil komie iskokonech imandai ak uyuyindo nekisibe menyon.
Well, over the last 20 years, the African Commission Working Group on Indigenous Population has done a lot of things. They have had a strong influence on legal standards, but they have also conducted a lot of activities to promote and protect the rights of indigenous peoples in Africa. They have conducted more than 15 country visits. They have held many trainings and regional sensitization seminars. They have also have a lot of dialogues with government and published more than 25 reports. And all these reports have important recommendations on indigenous people's rights, which they have often also had dialogue with government and important stakeholders about.
Des appels fondés sur la base d'allégations crédibles qu'on envoie directement au chef d'État. Et comme je l'ai dit, ils ont commencé à répondre, les chefs d'État ont commencé à répondre. On envoie au chef d'État du pays concerné pour dire il nous est revenu que voilà, il y a eu telle violation et telle violation. Et cela n'est possible qu'avec l'interaction du groupe de travail avec les organisations autochtones.
Also, we have gained a lot of capacity. We have gained a lot of capacity from the working group and from IWGIA, because I think one of the major roles of IWGIA is capacity building. For the working group and also for us, for indigenous organizations in Africa. So those are the things. It has built our capacities, and we have the capacity to oppose, to stand up, defend our rights, to stand up, because their intention was to dismiss some category of people as indigenous people. That was the issue. That was the main issue behind the study. So we could stand up and defend ourselves, and we succeeded. And I believe we succeeded.
IWGIA approached us when we didn't have a single donor. And they really had a lot of faith and trust in us. And they give us resources which we started the campaign on the childbearing practice. Those resources for 9 years has yielded result that currently we have a zero draft with the county government of Samburu to develop a policy that is going to influence the decision of young girls and women in Kenya. And for IWGIA to plant that small seed, just like you plant a tree which it has grown so big, that is where we are in Samburu Women Trust. It has become a women hub for girls, both in Kenya and in Africa. A hub that is supporting women in terms of capacity building, women to influence policy, women to challenge patriarchal, women to seek leadership in every position in Kenya. And to me, as a woman, I'm very proud. Where I work in Samburu Trust, we give, IWGIA as a milestone. And I'm sure even to those funders who planted that seed, I'm sure they should be somewhere celebrating.
For Africa in general, I would want to see that the indigenous movements really come together strongly so that they can do their advocacy in one voice. And in fact, that is what is being, required by international donors today. They want people, all the indigenous groups, to come together, because you cannot be alone. Somebody cannot be an island. So we should work together. All the indigenous movements in Africa, from the East, from Central Africa, from the West, from the southern part of Africa, we should all come together and articulate our issues in one voice, carry our issues at international level in one voice. It is already happening. It is beginning. It is happening, but it should be strengthened. It should be highly strengthened again. So that is what I would want to see happen in the next years to come.
The fact that you can see certain awareness, national awareness in a different state, this in itself, it's encouraging. The fact that indigenous people now can come forward and articulate their needs, even within governments or national assemblies and so on, without fear, without any fear that there will be reprisals. It is also a good sign that people are beginning to be open up for this change, and I have no reason to be pessimistic about the future of the movement.
Of course, there are challenges. We do not have enough resources. We do not have funding partners. However, each time we have approached funding partners, funds have never been refused because we are fighting the good fight. We are on the path to fulfilling a dream that started many years ago. Our journey continues hand in hand with the indigenous populations.
If I was optimistic 12 years down the line, when we didn't know what the future was holding for us, what of now that in terms of capacity, in terms of, we're in a position that we're able to influence many milestones. Yes, the future is very bright, and we are here to continue championing, influencing and inspiring more indigenous women, more indigenous girls to continue advocating for each space, for that their voices, their issues are put across.